The old motorcycle was kicked hard until it lay sprawled on the ground. The man just fell silent. His face bore a deep wound, not from the kick, but from the prospective mother-in-law's words that stabbed like a dagger. "How dare you propose to my daughter with this piece of junk motorcycle?" Before the story begins, we suggest you comment on which area you are watching this story from. Give a like and subscribe so that the dramatic story channel can grow and present the best stories. Let's begin the story. It had been over 10 years. Rizal was living at the peak of success. At 30 years old, he already owned the largest car spare parts business network in the city. His showrooms were spread across 4 provinces. His bank account held billions. And almost every month he was invited to prestigious automotive exhibitions. Yet it all felt hollow. What he sought wasn't praise nor the spotlight of cameras. Zal wanted something more. Genuine love. Too often he had been in relationships that ended bitterly. Most of the women who approached him only cared about the brand of car he drove, or the ATM balance that always had more than 2 digits. His heart was wounded. His trust in love was almost gone. Until finally, Rizal decided to take a different path. He rented a simple wooden house in a small village that was still pristine. Far from the hustle and bustle of the city, the village was nestled between expanses of rice fields and green hills, with dusty dirt roads in the dry season and muddy ones when the rain fell. The house was far from luxurious. Its walls were made of planks, its roof of old tiles. But it was precisely there that Rizal felt at peace. To perfect his disguise, Rizal bought an old Supra motorcycle. Its engine often sputtered, its paint was faded, and its seat was torn in several places. He even intentionally stuck a sticker that read "For sale cheap," to make people even more convinced that he was a nobody. Every morning, Rizal bought breakfast at Ibu Mariam's food stall. He ate on a long wooden bench alongside other villagers. No one knew who he really was. For him, this was the freedom he had longed for. No cameras, no small talk from business associates, no lavishly dressed women approaching him because of his sports car. And amidst that simplicity, Rizal met Lucy. Lucy was a sweet and gentle village girl. She was the daughter of Pa RT, a retired teacher, and her mother, Bu Ratna, was a respected village midwife. Lucy was often seen helping her mother at the community health post or cleaning the mosque yard. Her face was clean, her smile friendly, and her words polite. She was different. Their meeting began when Rizal helped Lucy, whose tire was punctured on her way home from the market. With a small wrench and a bit of ingenuity, Rizal helped change her motorcycle tire. From that moment on, they often met, be it at the food stall, the village field, or during community service. Rizal never revealed who he was. He only said he was a wanderer from the city who wanted to live a quiet life in the village. And Lucy never once asked about his job, wealth, or status. Their friendship grew naturally. Jokes and laughter came effortlessly. Rizal's heart began to feel comfortable. For the first time in his life, it felt like he was being loved, not for what he possessed. But in his silence, Rizal also knew that gradually he had to choose. He had gone too far into this disguise. He wanted to propose to Lucy. But could that love last if his big secret was revealed? And would Lucy's family accept a proposal from a man with a beat-up motorcycle? At that time, Rizal didn't know yet. But one thing he was sure of. He would soon seek the answer to everything. That day the sky looked clear. Birds chirped among the trees. Rizal looked at his face in the small mirror, hanging on the wooden wall of his rented house. He took a deep breath, straightened the collar of his simple long-sleeved shirt. On the table was a small ring box containing a white gold ring with fine carvings. The ring wasn't expensive, but he bought it with hope and sincere intention. He had polished his old Supra all night long, though it still couldn't erase the rust on the rims or the tears on the seat. At least it looked cleaner than usual. That day, Rizal was determined to propose to Lucy. Upon arriving at Pa RT's house, Rizal was greeted directly by Bu Ratna. Her gaze was cold from the first moment. She saw Rizal get off his old motorcycle. Bu Ratna's face changed even more when she saw Rizal bring only one small box, without any entourage. "All alone, Maz?" asked Bu Ratna in a high-pitched tone. Rizal bowed politely. "Yes, ma'am. I come with good intentions. I want to propose to Lucy." Pak RT, who came following from the living room, immediately narrowed his eyes. "What do you do for work, Mas Rizal?" "I trade, sir. I sell vehicle spare parts." "Have a shop?" Bu Ratna asked quickly. "Alhamdulillah, yes." "You mean that little kiosk on the side of the road?" Bu Ratna sneered, then stared at the Supra motorcycle parked in front of their house. Riding an old motorcycle like this, proposing to my daughter. The men who proposed to Lucy before came in a pajero. One was from Jakarta, the son of a rice entrepreneur. What do you bring? Just intention and a junk motorcycle. Rizal kept smiling even though his heart was starting to race. I indeed didn't bring a car, ma'am, but my intention is sincere. I love Lucy for her character, not for what she has, and I hope my love is accepted without looking at what I have. Pak RT exhaled heavily. You think life is just enough with love? Lucy is an educated girl. Many are queuing to make her their wife. You come here with an ugly motorcycle and yet dare to propose. Without many words, Pak RT walked to the front of the house. He approached Rizal's super motorcycle and in an instant, with a rough movement, he kicked the motorcycle until it rolled on the ground. The sound of clashing metal was heard loudly, making some neighbors turn to look from a distance. Bring such an old motorcycle to my house. Embarrassing. Get out of here quickly. Lucy stood in the doorway. Her eyes were teary. She didn't say anything, didn't step forward, only looked at Rizal with a face full of doubt. Rizal also looked at her, waiting to see if Lucy would defend him or just stay silent. But the girl remained standing in place. With trembling hands, Rizal bowed. He picked up the ring box again from the small table where he had placed it earlier. Then he slowly pushed his motorcycle, leaving the house with heavy steps. Road dust stuck to the hem of his trousers. The surrounding residents could only whisper to each other. Not expecting the proposal to turn into a spectacle, Rizal did not cry, but in his heart, it felt like something was torn. And behind the window, Bu Ratna sneered contentedly. She felt she had successfully maintained the family's dignity. Meanwhile, Lucy only watched Rizal's back slowly disappear around the road bend with a tight chest and unblinking eyes. Since the proposal event that ended in humiliation, Rizal was never seen again around Pa RT's house. He rarely went out, only occasionally seen at the food stall to buy basic necessities. The villagers began to wonder where Rizal's friendly smile had gone, the one who always joined community service and greeted anyone on the road. Meanwhile, Pa RT's house became busy again, this time not because of Rizal's proposal, but because of the arrival of a young man from the city named Lukman. He came driving a shiny white pajero wearing a neat suit and brought a small, polite entourage. Lukman's arrival was warmly welcomed by Bu Ratna. You see, Pa, this is a worthy prospective son-in-law for Lucy, whispered Bu Ratna with a wide smile. Pak RT nodded contentedly. Smart, established, and polite. Not like that one yesterday. Lukman himself didn't seem arrogant. He was polite in speech, often slipping praises for Lucy into his conversations. Although sometimes it sounded too sweet, Bu Ratna liked it. Lucy just sat quietly in the living room. Occasionally she bowed her head. Occasionally she offered a faint smile. After having lunch together, Lukman stated his intention. He wanted to propose to Lucy as soon as possible and take Lucy to live with him in the big city. He promised a magnificent house and a comfortable life. Pak RT and Bu Ratna welcomed it with inner applause. However, Lucy, she felt a heaviness in her chest. She didn't know Lukman well enough. She still often remembered Rizal. Rizal's tired face when pushing his motorcycle. Rizal's small smile when helping the villagers paint the mosque fence. But she couldn't express all that. She was just a daughter, and her parents had already chosen the path. That night, Lucy cried in her room. She stared at the ceiling, clutching a memory photo with Rizal, taken secretly in the backyard. During a mango harvest with the villagers, Rizal's smile in that photo was so sincere, not forced, not coated in luxury. However, life isn't just about feelings. Lucy knew her mother would never give her blessing for the love she chose. She slowly gave up. She accepted Lukman's proposal. Although her heart never truly followed, the wedding plans began to be arranged. Invitations were prepared, the venue was booked. Lukman's pajero became a symbol of success that Bu Ratna continuously showed off to the neighbors. In another corner of the village, Rizal only heard the news from the vegetable seller. Rizal nodded slowly. His face was calm, but in his silence he began to devise a new plan. A plan no longer to get Lucy, but to find who truly loved him. Not for his name, not for his car, and not for his wealth label. The days passed. The residents were busy talking about Lucy and Lukman's wedding, which was said to be the biggest celebration in the village that year. But in that small wooden house, Rizal grew even quieter. He wasn't waiting. He was assessing who deserved to stand by his side when he had nothing. And the universe began to move fate in a surprising direction. That morning, the village air was still cool. Dew hadn't completely dried on the banana leaves. Rizal was sitting in front of his rented house, sipping bitter black coffee without sugar. His face looked calmer than usual. He had passed through the pain, had accepted the reality that not all love could survive just because of sincerity. Suddenly, a small cry was heard from the direction of the rice field. "Miss, please help." The rope broke. Rizal turned, near the back well. A girl with her hair in 2 pigtails was trying to pull a bucket from deep within the well. Her bucket was stuck, and her rubber rope was tangled aimlessly. Rizal got up and immediately approached. "Wow, this rope needs to be replaced. Use nylon, not rubber." Rizal immediately lent a hand, fixed the broken rope, and quickly managed to pull the bucket out. The girl smiled widely. "Wow, thank you. You're really good at this. I'm Rizal." Cecil. Cecil was a new neighbor behind Rizal's rented house. She was from a simple family. Her father was a rice and corn farmer. Her mother did laundry for the villagers. They had just moved from a village across the way. Because of a plot of inherited rice field, they had just started to manage. Since that day, Cecil and Rizal began to meet often. Cecile wasn't the shy type, but she also wasn't chatty. She knew when to talk and when to be silent. Rizal liked that. Cecil never once asked about that old motorcycle or Rizal's life in the city. Cecil often brought food to Rizal's house, from boiled cassava to her mother's fried snacks. She even once helped Rizal when his motorcycle broke down on the road, pushing the motorcycle together to the front of the house. No shame, no pride. The days passed, and slowly, Rizal found new comfort. Behind Cecil's simplicity, there was a sincerity that couldn't be bought. Cecil didn't talk much about the future, but she was sensitive to the wounds Rizal kept. One evening, they sat together on the edge of the cornfield. The sky began to turn orange. Cecil held some soil, then said softly, "Life is like this soil, Mas. Sometimes muddy, sometimes dry. But if we are patient, something will surely grow eventually." Rizal looked at her. In his heart, he knew Cecil wasn't just a neighbor. Cecil was the woman Allah had sent when all doors were closed. That night, Rizal opened his small cupboard. He took out a blue folder he had hidden all this time. Inside were the documents of his company, showroom ownership certificates, photos with foreign automotive directors, and invitations from the National Entrepreneurs Association. He stared at one photo of himself, standing in front of a row of luxury cars with a magnificent showroom in the background. On the other side, there was a photo of him with Cecil, taken by a villager during the village tug-of-war competition. Rizal smiled. He had made a decision. He had disguised himself enough. He had been tested enough. Now it was time to turn everything around. But the biggest surprise hadn't come yet, because just as Rizal was preparing to propose to Cecile with his real identity, unexpected news spread in the village. Lukman turned out not to be who people thought he was, and all of it would be revealed during Lucy's engagement party. That day, the village was drenched in rain since dawn, but the drizzle couldn't stop the busyness at Pak RT's house. A blue tent had been set up since morning. Plastic chairs were lined up neatly, and the dining table was filled with various traditional cakes and a tumpeng rice cone. Buratna was seen bustling about with a wide smile, greeting arriving guests while occasionally showing off the diamond ring for her daughter's engagement. Alhamdulillah, Lucy found a match from the city. His car is a Pajero, his job is stable, his parents are respected, Buratna said to a newly arrived guest. Lucy sat quietly in the living room. The makeup on her face was beautiful, but the look in her eyes was empty. In front of her, Lukman smiled stiffly, busy answering Pa RT's questions about his career and income. Lucy just stared at the mineral water glass in her hand. That day, the engagement party turned into a party of shame. But the biggest drama hadn't ended, because Rizal's decision after this would truly close all opportunities for the past to return. The day progressed towards evening as Rizal's entourage slowly left the yard of Pa RT's house. The luxury cars kicked up dust from the village road that had just been hit by rain. The residents still stood by the roadside, not yet over their shock. Inside Pa RT's house, the atmosphere turned gloomy. Plates of food were left unfinished. Guests began to excuse themselves one by one with made-up reasons. Some suddenly remembered their laundry. Some said they had a headache. Those left were only the immediate family and a few close neighbors. Buratna was silent in the corner of the living room. Her face seemed to have lost its color. Her eyes were empty, her hands continuously crumpling a handkerchief. Pak RT tried to calm her, but Buratna's lips could only quiver without sound. Lucy stood stiffly in the corner of the room. Her eyes were teary. She hadn't had the chance to say anything since Rizal came. She felt her body light, as if floating. Her mind spun quickly, replaying all the events of the past few months. She wanted to be angry, wanted to scream, but her mouth seemed locked by reality. Lukman was gone. He left the event without a single word. Without excuse me, without a goodbye, ashamed, afraid and humiliated. He didn't even have time to apologize, and no one cared. That night, Lucy mustered the courage to leave the house. She walked along the dark village roads, only illuminated by dim streetlights. At the end of the alley, she saw the simple wooden house where Rizal used to live. But the house was already empty. The door was closed. The windows shut tight, no light from inside. Lucy bit her lip, trying to hold back tears. The next morning, a somewhat recovered Bu Ratna asked Pak RT to take her to Cecil's house. She wanted to talk directly to Rizal. She wanted to apologize and beg Rizal to reconsider Lucy. Upon arrival, Cecil's house was full of guests. It turned out that day Rizal and his family were holding an official proposal event. Guests came from the city bringing gifts and presents wrapped in satin cloth. Cecil sat in the living room with a happy face, accompanied by her simple yet shining with pride parents. Bu Ratna forced her way in, approaching Rizal, who was welcoming guests. "Rizal, please listen to me for a moment," she said in a hoarse voice. Rizal turned, his face still friendly but his gaze firm. "Ma'am, want to apologize? I was wrong, I misjudged you. If possible, Mrs. Ratna, I respect you as Lucy's parent, but I am not an item that can be returned after being rejected. My decision is final. I chose Cecil because she saw me for who I was when I only had a beat-up motorcycle and a rickety wooden house. Not when I arrived in a fancy car with a large entourage." Mrs. Ratna bowed her head. The neighborhood chief, Pak RT, patted his wife's shoulder gently and whispered, "Let it be, let's just go home." But Mrs. Ratna remained still. Her tears broke free, her body went limp. Several people immediately helped her to a chair. Her face turned pale again, her lips trembled. Rizal then called a nurse from among the guests, who turned out to be an old acquaintance from the city. A quick check revealed Mrs. Ratna's blood pressure was very high. She was taken home in a weak state. That afternoon, Lucy stood in front of the fence of Cecil's house. She saw Rizal holding Cecil's hand gently. Their faces were happy, surrounded by people who truly recognized their sincerity. And she realized regret had come too swiftly. But Rizal had already gone too far. 3 weeks after the proposal, the village was bustling again. But this time it wasn't due to bad news or a shameful scandal. It was because of the long-awaited happy news. Rizal and Cecil were going to hold their wedding. Invitations were spread to every corner of the village. Not through fancy prints or social media, but directly by Rizal and Cecil's family themselves. With friendly smiles, they knocked on door after door. Yet what amazed the villagers even more were the wedding preparations. The empty field next to the village hall, usually used for volleyball tournaments and harvest festivals, was transformed into the party venue. A large tent with elegant decorations was set up. A stage for folk music was built and a communal kitchen was established for the feast. Not to be missed, a red carpet was rolled out along the entrance path. On the morning before the event started, one fancy car after another arrived. Alphard's BMWs to Mercedes-Benzes were lined up neatly in the specially prepared parking area. Villagers stood by the roadside, watching the convoy of vehicles as if witnessing a high official's motorcade. Rizal got out of his main car wearing a black best cap, traditional Javanese jacket, with gold accents. His smile was calm, his eyes sparkled. Behind him, guests from the city got out wearing expensive suits and elegant gowns. Yet there was no arrogance. Everyone was friendly, even helping the confused village officers manage the parking. Cecil emerged from the house in a clean white kabaya, traditional blouse. Her makeup was simple, but it radiated an unmatched natural beauty. Her mother cried tears of emotion. Her father wore a borrowed batik from a neighbor, but his chest was puffed out with pride. The marriage vows, akad nikah, were held under the main tent. A solemn atmosphere enveloped every corner. When the vows were recited, all the guests held their breath. And when Rizal firmly uttered the words of acceptance, ijab kabul, the confirming response echoed from all directions, followed by thunderous applause. Shortly after, the party began. Typical village dishes blended with catering from the city. Dangdut koplo music accompanied the dances of the village children. Rizal was not only the groom, but also the host who mingled with the villagers. He didn't hesitate to taste fried snacks from the grandmothers, or sit cross-legged eating with the village youth. Amid the crowd, a few villagers whispered softly, "He came here on a beat-up motorbike before." "Yeah, the one Mr. RT kicked, right? Now he has an entourage of fancy cars like a king." But Rizal remained his usual self, never boasting about his wealth, never looking down on others. He just held Cecile's hand, gripping it tightly as if he never wanted to let go. Lucy attended that party, standing in the very back corner. She wore a light blue dress without heavy makeup, without a smile. She came with Mr. RT, who looked calmer, and Mrs. Ratna, who now sat in a wheelchair. Her eyes were empty, her face listless. She could only stare at Cecile from afar. Her lips quivered, but she couldn't utter a single word. Rizal noticed them. He just gave a polite nod. Nothing more, nothing less. Evening approached, the sky turned golden. A soft wind blew, carrying the scent of flowers from the bridal dais, Pelaminan. And amid the party, news began to spread. Rizal wouldn't just be staying in the village. He was building a large house on a 2-hectare plot of land, complete with an orchard and a fish pond, a house that would be where he and Cecile would build their new life together. 3 months after Rizal and Cecile's wedding, the villagers were amazed again by one surprise after another that they witnessed with their own eyes. At the western edge of the village, right on land that was once just overgrown with wild grass and weeds, stood a magnificent 3-story house with modern architecture, combining natural stone and teak wood. A black iron fence with gold details surrounded the spacious yard, complete with a flower garden, a gazebo, and a large garage. Every day, construction workers went in and out finishing the interior. Trucks carrying luxurious furniture arrived from the city. And finally, a small sign was installed in front of the fence that read, "Rizal Cecile's house?" The house was not just a residence. Inside, Rizal built a public reading room, a skills class for village youth, and a hydroponic garden that anyone could visit. He even hired 2 local young men to maintain the garden and fish pond in the backyard. The villagers who once judged Rizal by his old motorcycle began to realize how wrong they were. Even children often played in front of the house, just to see the fancy cars parked neatly in the garage, from a red Lamborghini to a shiny black Alphard. But strangely, Rizal and Cecile still lived simply in their demeanor. Cecile still liked to sweep the yard herself, and Rizal often sat on the porch sipping coffee and greeting anyone who passed by. One afternoon, Rizal sat with Mr. Darto, the village head who liked to tell long stories. They chatted while enjoying boiled cassava. "Mas Rizal," said Mr. Darto with a smile. "The first time you came on that beat-up motorbike, I thought you were just an ordinary migrant. But it turns out you're a city person, huh?" Rizal just smiled. "I'm still an ordinary person, sir. What matters isn't where we come from, but how well we treat others." That statement spread by word of mouth. Many village youths became more motivated to work, more diligent in saving, and no longer judged people solely by their outward appearance. Even the coffee shop near the village hall often discussed Rizal as an inspiration. Meanwhile, life at Mr. RT's house was a stark contrast. Since the embarrassing engagement party incident, Mrs. Ratna had fallen ill. She developed high blood pressure, which later turned into a mild stroke. Half her body was now difficult to move, and she often sat lost in thought in her wheelchair facing the window. She refused treatment in the city, even refused to talk about the past. Mr. RT tried to care for his wife patiently, but the emotional burden was clear on his face. Lucy, who was once touted to become the wife of a well-off man, now spent her time at home caring for her mother. She never got married. Lukman disappeared without a trace and was rumored to be involved in serious financial problems. The proud Pajero was now just a bitter story. One night, Lucy stood in front of Rizal's new house. She watched the beautiful garden lights. She didn't knock. She didn't call out. She just stood silently until finally the door opened and Cecile came out carrying sweet tea for her husband, who was reading a book on the porch. Lucy turned away quickly and walked off without a single word. In her heart, she knew it was all too late. That morning, the sky looked clear. Fresh air seeped in through the large window in Rizal's living room. At the dining table, Rizal and Cecile were enjoying a simple breakfast. Nasi uduk, coconut rice, made by Cecile with peanut, sauce, sambal kacang, and sliced omelette. Even though they now lived in a magnificent house with expensive furnishings, not one bit of their lifestyle had become arrogant or excessive. Suddenly, Rizal's cell phone rang. A message came in from his personal secretary at the head office in Jakarta. "Sir Rizal, Lukman was summoned to the office today for an evaluation meeting. He has failed to meet his target 5 times, and his Financial reports are problematic. We also received information about operational funds with unclear usage. Rizal read the message with a calm gaze. He nodded slowly, then put his phone down next to his cup of warm tea. "It's time," he murmured softly. That very day, Rizal drove to his branch office in the city. He deliberately didn't take a fancy car. He used an ordinary company car accompanied only by a driver and one staff member. In the meeting room, Lukman was already sitting with an anxious face. When Rizal entered, Lukman stood up nervously. "Sir, I can explain," he stammered. Rizal didn't speak immediately. He sat calmly in his chair, opening a file containing financial reports. He pointed out the numbers one by one. Fund discrepancies, unclear receipts, suspicious transactions. "I considered you family, I gave you trust. But you were busier showing off a lifestyle, funded by money that should have been used for company operations." Lukman bowed his head, cold sweat wetting his temples. "I'm sorry, sir, I was desperate. I just wanted to look worthy in the eyes of my prospective in-laws at that time." Rizal looked at him sharply. "And you deceived not only the company, but also the woman you proposed to with loans, car installments, and fake stories." Lukman couldn't refute it. He could only bear the shame. "Starting today, I ask for your resignation. Not because you once approached Lucy, but because you broke the trust," Rizal said calmly, yet firmly. After Lukman left the room, the other staff could only shake their heads. No one had suspected that the man, who had always had the most classy style in the office, was the one with the most integrity issues. That evening, Rizal returned to the village. He brought some books and stationery for the children. Studying in the reading room he built with Cecil, in front of the gate, several children were waiting cheerfully. Cecil also welcomed him with a big smile, wearing a simple duster, house dress, and her hair tied up casually. Rizal felt a peace he never got from cars, multi-story buildings, or bank balances. On the other side of the village, Mr. Artie's house grew quieter. Mrs. Ratna more often sat, motionless near the window. She never wanted to mention Rizal's name again, as if her heart wasn't ready to accept the reality that the man she once scorned was now a symbol of true success in the eyes of the villagers. Lucy continued to care for her mother, living her life in silence. Every night she opened a small box in her room and looked at a small blue ribbon she had secretly kept. A ribbon from Rizal that she wore when they harvested mangoes together. She clutched it, stared at the ceiling, and closed her eyes again in silence. That night, in the quiet village, two houses lived in contrast. One full of laughter and new spirit, the other filled with irretrievable regret. Day after day passed. Rizal and Cecil's magnificent house was now not just a symbol of success, but also the center of the village's social activities. Every Friday afternoon, children gathered to learn to read and write in the reading room Rizal made. Cecil patiently guided the girls in making handicrafts. Meanwhile, Rizal taught the youth the basics of automotive repair in a small workshop he built next to the house. Rizal not only shared his knowledge but also opened job opportunities. Several youths who were previously unemployed now worked assembling and repairing, parts sent to Rizal's showroom in the city. At the end of each month, they received wages sufficient to help their families. The village slowly changed, not just because of money, but because of a new spirit growing from the example set by Rizal. The villagers began to value honesty and hard work more, not just outward appearance. At Mr. Artie's house, Mrs. Ratna's condition did not improve. Her body grew weaker. Her memory often jumped around. Sometimes she called out Rizal's name in her sleep. Sometimes she cried mentioning the pajero and the beat-up. Supra. Regret suffocated her chest, creeping in silently like the night fog. Lucy now lived her days in resignation. She no longer hoped for the past. She began teaching children to recite the Quran, Mengaji, at a small prayer house, langar, near her home, trying to calm her heart through worship and service. But every time she passed in front of Rizal's house, her steps slowed, not out of jealousy, but because of the shadow of the one she had let go. One night when the full moon hung high, Rizal sat on the house's porch with Cecile. In his hand was a cup of warm ginger tea, and on his lap was a tiny baby born just 2 weeks prior. The baby's face was peaceful, its eyes not yet fully able to see, but its hand gripped its father's finger tightly. Cecile looked at her husband with eyes full of love. "If it weren't for that beat-up motorcycle," she said softly, "I might never have known who you really are." Rizal smiled and then kissed his wife's forehead. And if it weren't for you accepting me when I had nothing, I might not have believed in love again. The night wind blew softly, carrying the scent of damp earth and leaves. From a distance, the sound of the Isha prayer call, Azan, echoed. The small village that once rejected, Rizal for his appearance was now, where he built his family and shared his fortune. His house remained magnificent. His cars remained luxurious, but his heart remained humble. And the old Supra motorcycle was still there in the corner of the garage. Never sold, never replaced. Its seat had been repaired, its paint refined, but its license plate was still the same. A reminder that that's where it all began. Never judge someone by their appearance. Outer simplicity does not necessarily reflect the inner heart or true life. Many great people hide their nobility behind humble attitudes. The story teaches us that sincerity is far more valuable than false luxury. Those who choose with their heart, not their eyes, will find true happiness. This story is fictional story packaged seem real, created solely to take its lessons. There is no intention to offend any party. Thank you for watching and listening to this story until end. If you like stories like this, don't forget comment, subscribe enthusiastic about making other inspirational.